Video is okay.
Yes, Banteji.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Itipiso bhagavaraham samma sambuddho vidyacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisadamma sarati satta deva manusanang buddho bhagavati namo tassa samma sambuddhassa swakato bhagavata dhammo sanditi ko akaliko ehipasiko apanayiko pachattang veditabbo vinnohiti namo tassa niyanika sadammasa supatipanno bhagavato savaka sango ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sango nyayapatipanno bhagavato savaka sango samichi patipanno bhagavato savaka sango yadidang chattari purisa yugani atta purisa puggala esa bhagavato savaka sango ahunayyo pahunayyo dakkinayyo anjali karaniyo anuttarang punyaketang lokasati namo tassa atta arya puggala mahasangasa. Okay, so today's topic is this voluntary simplicity or voluntary poverty. Now the whole world is like it's being say motivated by development, progress, materialistic development. This seems to be very irrelevant, especially in this say in this present generation, this 21st century. It seems to be like voluntary poverty or voluntary simplicity when everybody is working for this uh, say increasing the income, the national income, individual income, of course, different kinds of say increase in the income and the wealth, materialistic wealth that has been like highlighted in all aspects of life. The communities, the societies, the governments, the state, the international level, everybody is working for how to come out of poverty. But when we are talking about poverty, voluntary poverty, it seems to be little irrelevant. But if you go a little deeply, and if you can try to understand about the ins and outs of what exactly is voluntary poverty, how it has some impact on the mental health and the peace and calming down the mind and achieving the balance in body and mind. A few aspects of voluntary poverty we look into. Of course, we are not proposing it or promoting it. We look into it, and how all other religions they talk about this voluntary poverty, and how the right view, the Buddha's view, or the right view of this voluntary simplicity. Buddha he never insists on voluntary poverty, but he insists on voluntary simplicity. There is something called right thoughts, samma sankappa, and that's right thoughts. Uh, the thoughts of simplicity he always encourages. Doesn't mean that one should give up everything, one should become a poor man. That is not the Buddha's version. And what exactly is the Buddha's or the right view about this materialistic wealth, and how other religions look at this materialistic wealth, and why the religions highlight on this voluntary poverty? Many religions, all religions for that matter. And how the right view is relatively or slightly different from this other religious views. And again, the aspect of moderation, aspect of middle path, uh, how to bring in this aspect of middle path in this the so-called simplicity or voluntary simplicity, so that One should not torture the body too much in the name of voluntary poverty, in the name of simplicity. At the same time, not get carried away by this sensual or this materialistic happiness and forget about the spiritual happiness, forget about the mental peace, mental health. That's again one more extreme. How to come out of these two extremes? By taking up this right view aspect, the Dhamma of this simplicity, the Dhamma of this voluntary simplicity or voluntary poverty, how to strike the balance, hmm, not to get carried away in the name of development, in the name of progress, in the name of materialistic progress, not get carried away by the weight of materialism, by the burden of materialism. At the same time, the name of simplicity and poverty, not torturing the body too much. Again, it is a wrong approach. So, how to strike the balance? What is the right view of this voluntary poverty that is very much highlighted in other religions, but in the present generation, the capitalistic materialism, this communistic materialism, uh, they simply ignore religion because of this too much emphasis on poverty or simplicity. That's why the many religions they're lacking that charm, that attraction. Maybe this is one of the reasons. Too much emphasis of the religions over that simplicity of living a very simple life. That has led to so many other side effects like exploitation, like maybe some kind of laziness also. Mm. So the physical laziness and exploitation in the name of simplicity by the religious people. So all these side effects also, all these problems also people faced. The communist states or the capitalistic states they faced, and because of that reason, again, they started highlighting on the materialistic wealth, the progress, the materialistic progress, or the development, materialistic development. And again, that led to so many other problems also. Too much materialism also led to other problems. So now we will see the religious version, the other religions, what they talk about voluntary poverty, and and of course, with very good intentions, all great masters they highlighted the importance of voluntary poverty. But again, the middle path, the moderation is like say if it is ignored, then it leads to so many other problems. Like the poverty has become one of the biggest issues all over the world. Poverty leads to diseases. Poverty leads to uh, say a lot of suffering, the materialistic suffering, in the name of spiritual happiness. We can't ignore the physical happiness also. We have to try to. We should learn how to try to say balance this physical happiness and mental happiness. If you emphasize too much on any one of them, then there is a chance of losing the balance and end up in the other kind of suffering. So because of that reason, you will see. So what is this simplicity? What is this voluntary poverty, and how it should be understood so that one should not fall into the trap of any of the extreme ideas in the name of say future life. We can't completely ignore the happiness of the present life in the name of spiritual life, spiritual happiness, in the name of mental health, mental happiness. We can't completely ignore the physical happiness or the physical comfort. And again, it's individualistic, the person to person, the balance between the physical health and the mental health, physical happiness and the mental happiness, materialistic comfort and the spiritual comfort. It varies from person to person. For a person like Buddha, completely giving up all the worldly, say, attachments, even the attachment to the body, attachment to the mind, mm, attachment to the worldly comforts like the palace, like the food also. So he could give up the food for 50 days, 100 days, so many days, and all other material comforts, essential pleasures, he could give up. But for his disciples, some of them, he can't insist so much on the simplicity. A few things for his lay disciples, for householders, he has to say something. according to his ability, according to his circumstances, how to become simple, how to strike this physical happiness and mental happiness, so that how much he should possess, how much he should hold on to, how much he should keep, how much he should give up. So that actually depends on the individual's temperament, individual's ability, individual circumstances. Hmm. So these things, Buddha is not so, say, adamant or so rigid in imposing hmm, the simplicity or voluntary poverty, and he has given a lot of, say, range, a lot of gradations for different kinds of individuals. The ladder of, say, simplicity, the ladder of giving and giving up, he has given, he has prescribed accordingly. One can stick on to, one can fit into that particular gradation, and then he can practice the Dhamma, the right view, the meditation, and all aspects of right view and Dhamma. So in that way, we should understand this right view aspect of simplicity and or voluntary poverty. And of course, before going into that aspect, we will see the other religions, how they insist, how they talk about this voluntary poverty. After all, deep inside, although people talk about materialism, people talk about uh, capitalistic materialism or communistic materialism, deep inside, a desire for spiritual happiness is also very much there among the human beings. Even today, even in this 21st century, even the people talk about so much about atheism, so much about agnosticism, no religion, no God. So many voices say now you can hear all over the world for talking about this kind of uh, non-religious, this non-religious tone, or in this no God atheistic tone. But still, deep inside, a desire for mental happiness is very much there. And for that, how this concept of voluntary simplicity or voluntary poverty will fit in, and then we will take up the right view aspect or the Dhamma aspect of this voluntary simplicity or voluntary poverty. Hmm? Okay. See, of course, there are some religions where they emphasize so much on this giving up. Like in Jainism, they emphasize so much on non-violence and so much on giving up, mm, the extreme giving up, extreme simplicity. That is like so becoming poor, and like say voluntarily taking up that kind of simplicity. That is what is voluntary poverty. mm. So they stop taking food, they stop using even the footwear, stop using wearing clothes also, mm. and sometimes uh, stop drinking water also, with a few kinds of water. So in that way, if it goes extreme, then it's like in the name of non-violence, in the name of not to kill other animals, other beings, not to torture other beings, other animals, but you are torturing yourself. If you have that ability to take it up, those things, it's okay, it's very good. But one can't impose that on each and every one, because each and everyone's individuality, individual ability to take up this kind of simplistic measures in their life to become simple, that may be too much. And say the so-called Jains, you can see because of this so much on this lay people, they too much the wealth also, they become too much wealth centered. But still, as a religion, because of these two extreme groups of people, two simplistic people, two wealth conscious people, there is some balance, of course, in the religion itself. That's why religion it's still there. From one of the ancient religions, it is more ancient than Buddhism. Still, it is there. Means like as a community, they could able to strike the balance. to extreme practitioners of this simplicity, and people who are emphasizing too much on wealth, because of the coexistence of these two groups of people in the same religion. That may be one of the reasons why it is divided religions. Emphasizes so much on simplicity, on both, say, the lay people and the serious practitioners like the monks and nuns. They perished. They declined and completely perished. Many small religions, of course, who those who emphasize it too much on the simplicity and poverty. And of course, even in the present modern Japanese religion, emphasized it so much. Even it was there. It started, I think, in the 18th century. Mm. But because of the too much emphasis, it again within a few hundreds. So in that way, say not say giving space for the materialism. If the religions emphasize so much on this simplicity, they have to perish. They will perish because it's finally it is the middle path that survives in the world. Mm. So in the religions like the Christianity, like especially the Catholics, Roman Catholics, they emphasize so much on voluntary poverty. There are so many schools of Roman Catholicism which emphasize on voluntary poverty. They try to be as simple as possible the lives, mm, the masters, and of course, especially the monastic environment, the, the temples or the churches who live there, the monasteries, they try to live as simple as possible. And in some Islamic sects also, in some schools, like even Sufism also they emphasize so much on simplicity. Mm. So, so in that way, of course, many religions, in the core of all religions, in a way, we can say to lead a simple life, so that materialism is a burden. That's what is the version of so many religions. Jesus Christ says, uh, a camel can go through the hole of a needle, the small hole of a needle. A camel can go through, but a rich man can't say get the heavens. He can't reach the heavens. A prosperous rich man. So that to that extent, he has to, of course, depending on the circumstance at which he was talking. He emphasizes so much on simplicity, not to accumulate the wealth and burden yourself when you're too much accumulated. When you have too much accumulated the wealth, the materialistic things, then you will be. There are two problems. One is like you have to take care of those things. All your time and energy will be spent on those things. And the second problem is like then you don't get time for say your spiritual practices. The second problem is like you may get puffed up with this materialistic wealth. The ego becomes very big problem. That because of that very ego of I have so many things, then you can't appreciate have not, and you can't appreciate the other people who are not having this materialistic wealth, and you may start showing your superiority, and that ego may develop, and you can't appreciate the joy of say unburdening. Once you develop that ego, and then you may start exploiting others also. Because of all these side effects, maybe Jesus has to say that even even a camel can pass through the small hole of a needle, but a rich man cannot reach the heavens. That may be the intention of many spiritual leaders, to make people as simple as possible. That is one thing, to unburden from these materialistic cravings, and to make them more God-centered or the next life oriented, so that they develop some kind of say religious qualities, non-materialistic qualities, the ethical qualities like offering, like morality. When you're too much focused on say materialism, then you will be more interested in accumulating only. When you are carried away by this accumulating of the materialistic thing, then you don't care for the morality also. Start exploiting other people, cheating other people. That is like you're not bothered about your moral precepts. Good for me, good for others. That ability you may lose, and you may become more greedy, more cunning, more exploitative, more arrogant, more proud. So all these problems are there. Because of that reason, the materialistic progress was not much appreciated, was not much encouraged by many religious leaders. And of course, their version is, I'd say, definitely there is a great wisdom there. Like once you become, uh, say, a little humble when not having the worldly things, then your mind will open about the wisdom of, say, this morality, wisdom of generosity, wisdom of mind purification, wisdom of thinking about what will happen after the death, the life after the death, the subsequent lives. Mm, the 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 great law, like the universal law of this karma, cause and effect. If you give, you get back. These things one can't understand when he is completely carried away by this materialistic progress. One who is puffed up with this ego of materialistic wealth. Because of that reason, of course, all the religious masters, they emphasized and they practiced and they made their disciples also to become as simple as possible. But as I told you, there are so many other side effects also that we will see later. So even in the political field also, many Indian reformers, great leaders, they brought in this concept of voluntary poverty. Many religious reformers, social reformers, political reformers, political leaders, they brought in this concept of voluntary poverty. Gandhi used it as one of the tool, the time of uh, freedom struggle. And it clicked during that time, it clicked the voluntary poverty concept of Gandhi. So he became, say, more acceptable by the masses. The vast majority of poor people in India, they could connect to Gandhi when he started talking about this voluntary poverty. Of course, it seems he was very much influenced by the Jainism, the aparigraha. Aparigraha means not holding, not accumulating, not possessing many things, and become as simple as possible, as unburdened as possible. Of course, he has that spiritual inclination also, and he brought in his social life, in his say in his political life also. He started promoting that. He has built a community who have decided to lead that voluntary poverty. Uh, and again, he was influenced by Tolstoy. Tolstoy also talk about this voluntary poverty, the bread labor. So, so one should say uh, make use of his body, the physical labor, through that whatever he earns, whatever earns, from that only he should take care of his body. So that was the concept of Tolstoy, and Gandhi subscribed to that concept of Tolstoy, and in the Tolstoy farm in South Africa, he started these experiments of this voluntary poverty, and of course many of the freedom fighters in South Africa also, and of course in India also, became followers of Gandhi. This is one of the attractions. This voluntary poverty has become attractions because this too much hoarding, too much burdening with a lot of materialistic possessions, that that will take away a lot of time of these freedom fighters or these social workers, or these volunteers. So because of that reason, Gandhi promoted this voluntary poverty, and at first it helped for the spiritual growth also. They could get a lot of time for their spiritual practices. They could get a lot of time for serving, either politically or socially, the other people, the needed people. In addition to that, it's like one kind of freeing themselves from the burdens of this materialism. So because of these reasons, it clicked, and of course it became successful. So in that way, there were so many other experiments, like so many other spiritual masters also in India. Even today, there are so many masters. Though a few of them, they look like huge monasteries or huge temples or huge, say, empires, but still the volunteers there, they lead a very simple life, taking one or two meals a day. They look very big. They may be accumulating a lot of wealth, but still the people inside, they may be leading a lot of the simple life. So, and of course, some experiments like some religious movements like ISKCON and all, they have started like Vedic way of living. They don't use electricity. They don't use, say, the inorganic things. They only cultivate the land. They produce the food, the vegetables, the rice, everything. Their clothes also sometimes they produce the cotton. They weave their clothes also. To that extent, in India, a lot of experiments. Of course, in other countries, I don't have much idea. There also maybe in some non-European or non-American, especially the Western, maybe in South America and in Africa, there may be some experiments because the country is the poor, the nation itself is poor. Mm. In a poor country, becoming rich is like a crime, and in a rich country, becoming a poor person is a crime. Because of these reasons, also many wise people they try to become poor or to lead a very simple life in poor countries, just like the Gandhi did, the Gandhian movement. So in that way, I think in some African countries, South American countries, some movements are there, and of course many religious organizations in India. Hmm, though they take care of their body in a comfortable way, but still a few concepts like eating less, eating only 2 meals a day or something like that, are having very simple life with regard to their dress, their accommodations and all. It is very much seen in many of the Indian spiritual organizations also. So that is about the religious view on this voluntary poverty. The view is like, say, the more materialistic things, the more time you have to spend on taking care of them or multiplying them, and that will become like a more burden, more hoarding of this possessing more things is a more burden of taking care of them, burden of having them, burden of multiplying them. Then you don't get time to serve, to do any kind of, to take up any kind of service, any kind of say a bigger superior goals in the life you can't look into, you can't think of, and definitely you can't think of your spiritual practice. You don't get time for meditation or prayers or any other spiritual practice. And you can't think of the life after this death, after the death of this life, after the death of this body. The subsequent, this law of cause and effect. Mm, if you have given now in this life, then you get back in the next life. That is actually the core law that is operating. Even Buddha also very much highlights this, and in all religions, to some extent, this aspect is very much there. That life after this present life, that also people ignore when one is very much carried away by this materialism. So because of these reasons, definitely the religions they have served the world by promoting this simplicity and voluntary poverty. But what is the version of this atheists or this capitalists, the so-called or the communists? They say all this leads to the more and more poverty, and people will fall into say more um, say this kind of the materialistic or this physical suffering. You know, and that may lead to a lot of say uh, poor health conditions, not getting proper nutrition, the nutrition problem, and thereby the body again suffers. And of course, there's a lot of again, lot of sense in it. That's why the whole world is now behind the development, the progress, materialistic progress and development. All countries are still competing. China, which was supposed to be a very, very poor country, when they were so much dependent on the religions and culture, the tradition. So they were very much like poor, and now when they started working on this physical welfare or materialistic welfare, within a few decades, they became almost number one, the fastest growing economy it became. And of course, now India also, there's a lot of emphasis on development and progress. And all other countries also, it is very much highlighted. Even the UN resolutions also highlighting about the importance of uh, development. And some wise people, they're talking about not just development, sustainable development. One should think of not simply destroying the nature in the name of development and forgetting about uh, the balance between the human welfare and the welfare of other beings in the nature, in this existence, and also about the future, depleting all the resources now in the name of development and struggling again for some basic things like food, water, and fresh oxygen in the future. And then about the diseases, different kinds of diseases, what a person may go through in the name of development. So keeping these things in the mind, some people started talking about sustainable development. That is still better. So in that way, development is very much highlighted now. So now we will see how to strike the balance. What is the right view about uh, this simplicity, about this voluntary simplicity or voluntary poverty? Who can do this depending on individuals' abilities? How one can strike the balance? One should always look at these things at an individual perspective. One should not get carried away with some say spiritual ideology or with some say with some emotion. Yes, I should lead a very simplistic life, or I should lead a very posh life. They're all two extreme emotions. So one should not carried away by those emotions. Then only one can have a superior or a better physical health and mental health, and also one can progress both materialistically and also spiritually. That's what is the middle path. That's what is the right view. That's what is Dhamma actually. That's what is Buddha's view. That's what is Dhamma. Hmm? Buddha, in one of the discourses, he says, only there are two goals in the life. There are only two aspects that people should work for. One is liberation, liberating from the clutches of this body and mind. One should transcend this body, one should transcend this mind also. For that, he has given so many kinds of techniques, meditations, Dhamma, teachings. And of course, on all those teachings, there is some emphasis on giving and giving up. That is becoming simple. Simplicity is very much highlighted. At the same time, Buddha never ignored the materialistic comfort also, because of his say more because of his that holistic wisdom, that all encompassing omniscient knowledge and holistic wisdom. He emphasized on the materialistic comforts also. If you are a householder, your goal should always to accumulate wealth. If you don't accumulate wealth at your young age, then you can work hard, you can say use your mind and skillfully, use your intelligence skillfully, and if you don't accumulate wealth, then you will in your old age, and if you are at your young age, you have not completely dedicated yourself to the cause of the spiritual goal, that is nibbana, then you are at the old age, you will be like one say absolutely like one the arrow which is shot in the dark, the arrow which is shot in the dark. That means you can't hit either the comfort in the old age, the physical comfort, and nobody will take care of you. Or if nobody will take care of you, if you are spiritually mature, it's not a problem. Then you can become, like say, you can enter into nibbana and you can die peacefully. But everybody, they can't achieve that. Buddha knew that. And even say so many people, so many householders, they became sotapannas and all. That means like who could see the glimpse of nibbana, but still at the old age, there should be some kind of protection from the family, from the community, from the state. Because of that reason, so that protection from the world you will get from your accumulated wealth only. That's why Buddha emphasized the lay people to work enthusiastically, work skillfully, work intelligently to accumulate the wealth. He himself has given up the kingdom, all the luxurious life of a palace, of course, to achieve the higher happiness, that is nibbana, nibbanam paramang sukham. He could achieve it, but the same thing may not be possible for all the lay people. So for such people, the protection, the safety, the insurance is in this life, especially at the old age. So because of that reason, he had to emphasize on accumulating the wealth for a householder. At the same time, the insurance for the life after this life, the subsequent lives, is these different spiritual practices, the different ethical and spiritual practices that he highlights, which are very much required even to achieve nibbana, like being generous, dana, generosity. So, a part of it you save it for the old age. A part of it you give donation. You give, be generous, give to the needy people, give to the spiritual causes. Then that will be like your insurance for the life after this life. That is for the subsequent lives. And whatever you save by working hard and saving it, that will be your insurance for the old age in the same life. So in that way, Buddha very intelligently he has asked his disciples, especially the lay disciples, to take up both this materialistic progress and hoarding some materialistic wealth as an insurance in the old age, and also practicing these spiritual things or these religious things like generosity, dana, service, the meritorious things, meritorious actions one should take up, because they will act as the insurance, as the protection, as the security, as a protection for your next birth, for your next life. If you have given now, then you will get back in the next life. Like many religions, they emphasize, Buddha emphasized this kind of moderation, giving everything or say doing nothing, not earning anything, not using your intellectual abilities, physical abilities, all of skillfulness to achieve this, even at least the physical things, the materialistic things. The spiritual things need much more intellectual abilities, much more virya, much more effort you have to put forth to achieve nibbana, to achieve some spiritual, say, stages, superior stages, if you want to achieve, it requires much more exertion, much more intelligence, much more skillfulness. If you can't show your skillfulness in this materialistic success, then how can you show the skillfulness in the spiritual success and achieve the spiritual ends or spiritual goals? It's not possible. That's why one who is successful in the worldly life, he has the better or the superior reasons, higher reasons for his success in the spiritual life also. If you are not capable of handling your own physical things, then definitely you can't work for your spiritual needs. Because of that reason, Buddha, of course, he has achieved a lot of this excellence in his materialistic life, in so many lives, as when he was a bodhisattva. And many of his monastic friends and monastic disciples, they were also like Sariputta, like Moggallana, like Kassapa, and so many people. They achieved that excellence in the materialistic life as kings, as businessmen, as millionaires, as wise people. They achieved all those things. So for them to achieve the spiritual excellence in that life, in their last life, when they were with Buddha, it became easy. But for a common man who has not achieved excellence in his materialistic life by using all his intellectual abilities, physical abilities, then thinking about the spiritual excellence is foolishness. Because of that reason, Buddha encouraged the materialistic progress also. At the same time, balancing the materialistic progress with the spiritual progress by practicing some of the spiritual say qualities or spiritual meritorious actions like dana, shila, service, vaya, vacha, and keeping in touch with the monastics or the spiritual people who are genuinely into this spirituality. And of course, now it is very much corrupted. Once that corruption happens, then they can't promote this kind of materialism, this right view and Dhamma correctly. And that's why there's a lot of confusion with regard to Buddha's teachings also, because the very people who claim themselves as the representatives of Buddha, they are leading very corrupted life, means like their words will not carry any weightage, or their actions also will not motivate other people. That's why many of these say Buddhist sects also, like in Tibet, and of course all over the world. So they had to say face the consequences of their wrong practice or their evil practice of Dhamma. That's why they were kicked out of Tibet. So in the same way, of course, I don't say that that sect itself is bad. The thing is like, so if you are like say that say if you are correctly practicing the Buddha's teachings according to one's own ability, if he is a bhikkhu, then he should practice 227 precepts, and he is true to that practice, and the people will be inspired, and he will also be like spiritually progress. And for some people it is too much, then he has given only 10 precepts, like a novice monk. So for him, that if that itself is good enough, then he can stick on to it. Then he need not boast of that I am great bhikkhu or great mahatera, and he can't even practice one precept. He doesn't have one quality of a bhikkhu, then the very system will collapse. That's what happened to Buddhism. People completely lose interest when they start going reading and learning about the different duties of a bhikkhu, of a samanera, of an anagarika, and they don't fit into that, and simply they are leading some kind of hypocritic life. Then again, the lay people also they too become hypocrites in respecting or in practicing the Dhamma. Because of this reason, exactly because of this reason, Buddha has given, If you are not capable of practicing 27 precepts, be a samanera and just stick on to it with 10 precepts only. If you are not capable of even 10 precepts, stick on to 8 precepts, anagarika. Be truthful. The truthfulness, that cohesiveness, or that coherence only is power. It's not too much ambition to show off, but not sticking on to what you have promised or what you have promised to yourself or promised to others. That leads to corruption. That leads to all kind of accumulation of defilements, multiplication of defilements. Then it will invite a lot of suffering for oneself, suffering for the people who are having some trust in such kind of monastics. So slowly, the entire system will collapse, which will decline, collapse. That's what happened to Buddhism in India because of lack of the coherence. Though Buddha has given absolutely the middle path for each and every one, but in this over or over crookedness to show off, the so-called monastics, they started accumulating, hoarding a lot of materialistic things, though they are supposed to promote the simplicity. So in that way, though there is some problem in the practice of Buddha's teachings by the so-called disciples or the monastics who follow Buddha, but the teaching of Buddha is so powerful, so beautiful, so balancing, so authoritative and so balancing, which can fit into, which can be say accepted by each and every individual according to his own abilities and can practice very truthfully, very honestly. So because of these reasons, though the Buddhists of so-called Buddhists, they seem to be like say not very authoritative in practicing this right view of balancing this worldly progress or the materialistic progress and the spiritual progress in a balanced way. But the Buddha's teachings are very clear. He's very much clear and very much authoritative. A great combination of wisdom and compassion is very much there. When one of the disciples who later became the enemy of Buddha, who tried to create a lot of problems for Buddha, though he has taken everything from Buddha, but though he was following so many things of Buddha, but he tried to dominate and overpower Buddha because of his ego and stupidity. Uh, though he was taking that kind of ungratefulness and disrespect he developed, and he wanted to show off that he is more superior than Buddha, and he wanted to prove that his ideas are far better than Buddha. So he started to he gave some a few techniques or a few propositions, like all the bhikkhus, all the monastic disciples of Buddha, they should take only vegetarian. They should live only in the forest. That extreme simplicity or that extreme, what do you call, um, say, uh, that asceticism. He started promoting extreme asceticism. That simplicity, asceticism means like becoming more and more simple, non-worldly, more spiritual, ascetic, So Buddha rejected it. So for me, or maybe for some other people, it may be easy to give up everything and live in the forest only, under the tree. And for me, it may be easy to take up only vegetarian food, or even without food also I may survive. But for a different kinds of practitioners, so according to their ability, it may be too much for them, for my disciples. If whatever the lay people out of faith, if they offer some shelter, some accommodation, there is no harm in accepting it and leading some kind of comfortable, physically comfortable life in some comfortable accommodation. And if some people offer some food, whatever food they eat, whether it is vegetarian or non-vegetarian, you just eat that food, particular food, and just forget about this eating business. Why should you create so much of, say, fuss, and why should you make it a big problem, accepting only this food, only that food, and creating problem for yourself, like in places like this, like in Nepal or in this Himalayas and in say Tibet and all. Say if you stick on to only vegetarianism, then many times you may not get vegetarian food here. Then you may die. It's like torturing yourself. In the name of compassion, in the name of non-violence, you are creating a lot of torture and violence on yourself. That is also one kind of violence, not just inflicting violence on others. Inflicting violence on oneself is also is not permitted. It's like it's absolute stupidity. So that way, according to one's own ability, one should have a balance in this materialism and in the spiritual practices. So that way, Buddha has given the different gradations. If you can't practice so many things, you step down, you come back a little bit. That kind of flexibility is seen is in Buddhist monasticism also. That is one of the unique things that is there in Buddha's teachings or Buddhist monasticism and Buddhism that I haven't seen in other religions. What is that? So if you are a 227 precepts following bhikshu, a full-fledged monastic, if that is too much for you, then you can step down. You can practice less than that. You can practice 75 or 10 precepts. If that is also too much for you, practice 8 precepts. That is also too much. Practice 6 precepts or 5 precepts according to your own ability. No need to show off that I am so big Mahatera, Bhikkhu, and I'm not even practicing one precept. Don't have even one quality of a bhikkhu, and showing off things that is like absolute hypocrisy. And such people will know that hypocrisy is the mother of all evils. That Buddha knew, and that's why many religious monastic systems they became a great failure because of this hypocrisy. They became hypocritical. So in that way, striking that balance, having that enthusiasm, and of course, earning for giving, mm, development for the sake of just to give and give up, like so many wise people, like all materialistic, progressed, the giants, the business giants or the worldly giants. Some of them, they are they have the intention of giving and giving and giving up the spiritual intentions also. Mm. So they build great empires with an aspiration of giving employment to millions of people, thousands of people. They earn to give to the society. Mm. So with that kind of, that should be the intention for the lay people. So with that intention, if they start working, they can work better, work skillfully, and with that intention, they can, of course, they can become successful and they can take care of themselves in the old age. They can help so many people. They can get name and fame. They can get respect. They can get love. They can get physical comforts. At the same time, if the intention of, say, welfare in the next life, if they can start practicing some of these services and the donations, again, it will protect them in the next life. It will act as an insurance for them. And if some people are much more, if they become wiser, they can start taking care of some superior spiritual aspirations, like the organizations which are working for this enlightenment or nibbana. If they start protecting such organizations, then they can connect to that kind of higher wisdom, and they may achieve that kind of higher wisdom, maybe in this very life or in the subsequent lives. In that way, materialism will not become a hindrance if it is properly understood. How accumulating wealth, earning, say, riches, how it can, even it can be utilized, used for this balanced physical comforts and mental comforts, and also balance in the comfort in this engage, comfort in the at the old age, comfort even after the death. How this materialistic wealth can be used, if that kind of wisdom is there, then there is no harm in it. That's what is the right view of Buddha. Okay, I think this much is enough for today about this right view of simplicity. According to one's own level, one should look into this kind of comfort uh, in the essential things, satisfying essential desires and satisfying spiritual desires. One should have that middle path approach. And that middle path approach, moderation approach, it depends on from person to person. If a person is so much attached to physical things, to asking him to give up one meal a day, once in a week, that itself becomes a big problem for him. So of course, with some kind of spiritual rules or religious rules, some people may practice, but now even everyone started thinking independently. So even the rationale behind this intermittent fasting, if that is not understood properly, even to give up one meal also become a big problem for some people. So that way, it's always through persuasiveness, through convincing, through by making the people to understand what are the benefits for the body and for the mind, by becoming simple, and now where you are, at what stage you are, what is the next step that you should take up in becoming more simple, more happy, to achieve more superior happiness of giving and giving up. That understanding one should get. Otherwise, why I have to give up? Why I have to give and why I have to give up? Therefore, the essence of Four Noble Truths. The more and more you accumulate, crave, it leads to more and more suffering only, more and more burden only. The very body and mind itself is a burden. Buddha says, Sankirtena Panchupadana Kanda Dukkha. The very body and the four components of the mind. When you're carrying it, that itself is a dukkha. If to that extent people understand, then they start appreciate this giving and giving up. And giving up, though you understand, but actually practicing it becomes much more is far difficult. It's very difficult. So until and unless you start tasting that giving and giving up, and tasting that superior happiness of giving and giving up, one should also enjoy. One should also accept. One should also enjoy using his all the physical and mental say abilities to get the physical comforts, the physical, say, the materialistic benefits like wealth, like name and fame. But at the same time, wisely, one should learn how to give it up for a superior cause, for a superior happiness, like the happiness of freedom, happiness of unburdening, happiness of liberation, happiness of enlightenment, happiness of the life after this life and the subsequent lives, happiness during the old age, happiness of being loved and appreciated and respected by the people, by this art of giving and giving up. If this wisdom slowly develops, then giving and giving up becomes more and more easy, and then simplicity, living a simple life becomes more and more easy, and then deriving the benefits of simple life becomes more and more easy. Until then, one should learn how to strike the balance in this materialistic progress and also in the spiritual progress, in the physical happiness and in the mental happiness. Happiness here and now, happiness hereafter. Hereafter means maybe in the old age or the next life or the subsequent lives. So that kind of holistic approach will start getting when you say learn this art of balancing. Okay, so that is about this voluntary simplicity or voluntary poverty. One need not take subscribe to some of the spiritual movements which completely highlight on this voluntary poverty, or one need not subscribe to this the present day. People are pushing political leaders, reformers, everyone, the name of simply in the name of development, name of progress, simply making people to become this consumerist. Consumerism is very much highlighted now, either in capitalistic materialism or in communistic materialism. They're highlighting this consumerism. Consumerism means like simply buying this, buying, keeping this, keeping that. Having one car, no, should have two cars, not just ordinary cars, some brand new models. Having this, having that, holding on to so many things foolishly. That again, of course, one should have some sense, some kind of, say, observation, some kind of awareness, how much happiness I'm getting, how much people are foolishly influencing their foolish ideas on me. So all this balance, if you have, then you will learn this wisely how to progress in this voluntary simplicity, voluntary poverty, and that's how uh, one should look at this materialism and spiritualism. One should look at this so-called, say, materialistic benefits and spiritual benefits. Okay, so with this, I think we'll conclude. If you have some questions, you can ask. Any questions? Any questions?
Namaste, Banteji. Um, one question from Bhavani Chandrasekhar, ma'am, Banteji. She's asking, uh,
Can you send here
yes, Banteji.
in this chat?
Yes, Banteji.
Yeah, this is the problem. People want to simply show off that they care something, but in reality, the people care only themselves. So when some pleasure is there, then they appreciate that person who is giving some pleasure. When they are in difficulty, when they become a burden, then with some sickness or with some problem, then they realize that, oh, taking care of myself itself is a problem. So in the name of compassion, in the name of, say, service, I am helping so many animals, so many beings, so many people. But in reality, taking care of oneself, actually deep inside, everybody is like selfish. That's why working for freedom is a superior goal in life, rather than simply for the sake of protecting these people, taking care of these people, these animals. That is again deep inside. By doing this, I get something that is very much there. It's only at the physical level, but the burden is burden. Even the pets or the people, or even my body, my mind itself is a burden. Sankitena panchupadana kaladutta. Then definitely other bodies, other minds also will definitely a burden. So one should take care of according to one's own ability, either the people, the pets or children, the family or the organization or the nation or community, according to one's own ability again. Not out of some ignorance or out of some arrogance or some out of proudness or out of some people prizing me. Out of that kind of, say, it's all ignorance, of course, delusion. If you start doing the things, start liking or protecting or caring or all these things, like say, it is just for uh, there are two things. One is like it is just you should care or love or protect something because in turn you should be protected. That is one thing. Second thing is like you should see one's own your own ability. If you are incapable to take up, say, protecting so many things, then you should accept your inability. That very acceptance, it will keep away a lot of guilt and lot of say remorse. If you say something, I do this, I will take care of you, I will protect you, but if you are incapable, then that guilt comes. So because of that reason, one should be frank enough, honest enough that why I have this relation. So the very honesty will keep you away from lot of regret, lot of remorse, lot of guilt in many relations. Not only the relation between a man and an animal, like a householder and a pet, even the relation between husband and wife, parents and children, friend and friend, boss and employee, all these relations, it is too much hype, too much expectation, too much, say, deluded idea that I am protector, you can depend on me, or I am dependent on you, you save me. This kind of hyped emotions or hype expectations, they lead to guilt, they lead to remorse, they lead to, say, uh, regret. So to come out of this, honestly, knowing my ability, expressing my ability, that saves you from lot of guilt, lot of remorse. Everyone, all of you, I'm telling you. So let me try to maintain that kind of honest relation with all kinds of other beings, even with the spiritual leaders, even with the political leaders, with your boss, with your employee, with your husband, with your wife, with your children, your friends. This is what is my ability. This much I can protect you, take care of you, or this much I expect from you. If that kind of honesty is not there, then only that hyped notions, that puffed up or hyped notions, that lead to more and more expectations from the other side. or from your own subconscious, then that leads to all this kind of guilt and worry and remorse and all these things. That's why one should learn to be honest with their abilities, with their care, with their good feelings, with their intelligence, with their everything, physical abilities, mental abilities, emotional abilities. But very honesty is the savior in this kind of distorted or skewed emotions. Okay. Again, it is the moderation always depends, the middle path always depends upon the truthfulness. So in that way, if you are understanding the right view, the middle path, the moderation, you have to understand the beauty of truthfulness, the beauty of honesty. Honesty with everything, with your relation, with your emotions. So that is what is required. Then automatically all the remorse and all the guilt will go away. Now we'll conclude with a small chant. नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्सा भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वभूतानुभावेन सर्वधर्मानुभावेन सर्वसङ्घानुभावेन सदा स्वस्ति भवन्तु ते सुखी भवेयं दुःखो अहं नित्या अहं विया विधा च मे सुखी हन्तु मज्जता च तवेदिनो इमां हि गम्यन्ते धम्मे सत्ता हन्तु सुखी सदा अतो परञ्चारज्येषु चक्रवालेषु जन्तनो साधु 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 सुखी हन्तु मंगलो. May all of you be happy, healthy and peaceful. May all beings also be happy, healthy and peaceful. Sukhi Hon.